I'm pleased to have as my guest today Derek Paulsen as Commissioner of Planning, Preservation, and Development. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you.
We're very happy to have you. I want to get to your background in a minute, but first I want to start with your position as Commissioner and your department as it's been created. As I understand it, prior to your arrival here, there was no Department of Planning. Give us some history of the department, the organization as it existed before you came, and as it's organized now.
Absolutely. Before I got here, you're right, there was no department. I believe a little bit after Mayor Gray took office, council kind of got together and decided we need to put a little bit more focus on planning and development and elevate it. I think Lexington has always had this sort of really strong support for good planning, good design. I like to think that we have a lot more people that are much more interested in how we do things in Lexington. I think that it goes back to our history of our urban service area and other things, that we don't have as much land to kind of play around with and get it wrong once or twice. But when this position was created, the selection process kind of ended up, and there I was as the new commissioner, first commissioner, which in itself was interesting. As we kind of chatted earlier, there wasn't really an office for me to go to. This was all brand new, so it was including I got to help come up with the name for the department.
Yes.
You know, it was just that we were going to have a planning, commissioner of planning, but we've got these other departments. And originally it was the Department of the divisions of Planning, Historic Preservation, and PDR, which also the former head of PDR, Billy Van Pelt, also was the design officer for courthouse area design, the Design Review Board. So kind of had three and a half different divisions at that time, and that's where we got planning, preservation, and development from. I started in February of 2012, and one of the things that they had wanted to do was try to find a way to get new development underneath this department as well, just to try to help streamline the planning and development process with the new development section within engineering, to try to get it to work with planning a little bit better and a little bit easier. Quickly we found that wasn't possible legally. Kind of had to have new development underneath the county engineer. So we just sort of said, well, why don't we just put engineering in the department as well? So in July of that year, engineering officially came into the department. And then throughout last year, throughout the rest of 2012 and the beginning of 2013, more discussion kind of went on about, if we're really going to, as we're going about thinking about this and what the department does, it really became this focus on not just overall large planning goals, but really on neighborhoods. And this overall focus on how we take a neighborhood from the very beginning stages, from those planning land use decisions from where we are with PDR, are we inside the urban service area or outside, to what kinds of zones we have, to the next step being how do we develop the streets? How do we start to develop a neighborhood? And that's when engineering came in and planning again, to building the neighborhoods. And that's when we decided planning should encompass building inspection as well. So we then, building inspection came in as well as code enforcement, which is another one of those things. Once a neighborhood is built, how do we maintain it? How do we make sure this neighborhood is sustainable, that it's moving along and it's where it should be? And then with historic preservation, we still have that kind of, as we're going along, as it starts to age, get a little older, how do we preserve the neighborhoods that are so important to us as well? So I like to think we have neighborhoods kind of covered from birth. I don't want to say till death, but till a ripe old age, and trying to keep things going along and trying to keep our neighborhoods functioning as well as we can.
Right. So it's actually a very large department, isn't it?
It is. I think there's somewhere, it's not one of the largest departments. There are other departments that are much larger. Police has 500 or so, but with 6 different divisions, I think we have 125 or so, maybe almost 130 different people underneath me now, and a budget, I think it's over 10 million somewhere in there.
Name those divisions for me.
Again, it's the Division of Planning, Historic Preservation, PDR, Engineering, Building Inspection, and Code Enforcement.
Okay, good. Thank you. I know our viewers would enjoy knowing your background, so if you could give us a synopsis.
It is an interesting thing. You would think, as the first commissioner of planning, that I would have a background in planning of some sort. Now I do planning. It's just a non-traditional background in planning. I actually have a PhD in criminal justice, and am still I'm on. Oh, what's the best way to describe it? I am on leave from Eastern Kentucky University. I was a professor of criminal justice there for the last 12 years. I occasionally still teach a graduate class here and there. But how I came to where I am is my research. I did a lot of research on spatial aspects of crime. Where did crime occur? And the more I did that as a grad student, the more I became to see that there was ways we could prevent crime and determine where crime is going to be based on the built environment. So where our roads are, how we build buildings, had a big impact on crime patterns. As I started to do more research, it really started to get more into planning policy. And for years, I taught a graduate class at Eastern to police officers, to generally higher ranking officers that are commanders, captains, assistant chiefs, on planning and crime. And ended up writing a book for the American Planning Association on crime and urban planning, and how we can use those things to help reduce opportunities for crime. While I was doing all that, I was a member of the Planning Commission here in Lexington, and got to know both Mayor Newberry, previous mayor, as well as Mayor Gray, and just through some of the work that I've done both here in Lexington and in other communities. And when it came time for this new commissioner position, the mayor said, well, you should apply. And that's the funny story where I thought, well, my wife said, sure, not thinking I'd ever get the position, but little did she know. And here we are, almost 2 years later.
Well, we're glad to have you, I can tell you that. Of all your obligations in this very complex department, what takes the most time in your personal involvement, Derek?
Well, and it's one of those things. There's two ways I kind of look at what I do. You've got kind of the day-to-day in which you're never really sure as a commissioner or even a division director, you're not really sure the day-to-day what you're going to get. Each day you've got different issues, and with six divisions you've always got issues kind of going on. Sure. We deal with, I feel, a lot of the very public issues that really hit home. These are things in your neighborhood. So it can go from a code enforcement issue where we've got somebody who's not maintaining their yard to a huge degree, basically has some sort of a junkyard going on, or it can be someone saying, hey, my neighbor is building something without a permit, or development plans. We've got, you take your pick. We've always seemed to have some sort of controversial development proposal going on, and even engineering. With engineering, we've got roads. It's amazing. Taste Creek sidewalk is going on. The construction is going on right now and going at a tremendous pace. They're doing a fabulous job.
Right.
But getting that to that point, once people love to have a project, they want a road, but as soon as you start construction, they want it done. Yeah. And so we are constantly dealing with all those different issues of how we get things moving, how we keep those things going. And historic preservation is also, within a historic neighborhood, there's never a shortage of all things. I got a call today from, I live very close to a historic neighborhood, a friend of mine who lives in it saying, we had someone last night walking around with a chainsaw cutting down tree limbs. Is that allowed? And I said, I really don't know. We'll get on that. Yeah, so It's the day-to-day dealing with the smaller issues while also trying to really keep an eye on the larger, bigger pictures. And with this division, we also have a lot of really big picture issues that we need to deal with. From land use, the comprehensive plan is just finishing up right now. Hopefully will be enacted within the next month. So we're dealing with those larger issues. Where do we find land for economic development? We do a lot with economic development. I help out Kevin Atkins, our director of economic development, a great deal, working with Commerce Lexington on how we can bring companies in. And again, but also that maintenance of the neighborhoods. How do we set those policies that make sense for sustainable neighborhoods to really keep our neighborhoods in the best shape? And then again, engineering policy, building roads, you got to think 5-10 years out. Yeah. So there's never a shortage of the higher level planning issues as well as the lower level dealing with things. And that's a lot of times it's dealing with the public, answering those calls where it's I'm the one who's going to have to make those decisions and answer to some of those people who really have complaints or have really strong concerns. So going to neighborhood association meetings and being able to answer those questions for them is a key part.
I can understand. From your standpoint as commissioner of a fairly complex department, what do you see as the major problems that Lexington is facing today? And maybe I should say not only problems but opportunities.
Well, I think we do have a lot of opportunities. One of our biggest issues that we're dealing with in our department right now is it's not within our department, but it's associated with the capacity assurance program or the consent decree that's coming on. And the implications from that are large. It's a $600 million consent decree where we've got both remedial measures, replacing existing storm sewers, sanitary sewers, as well as trying to build what are called wet weather storage tanks, very large tanks to deal with those things.
Right.
But where that really impacts us in numerous ways is, you cannot, what we call tap on. You can't get a water tap permit. You can't open your building unless you have capacity. And so from a growing the city in the best way we can, we are trying to find out how do we still grow, how do we keep the city open for business while we have this rather large obligation that we have to deal with. And that includes, again, new jobs as well as residential. It's housing, it's economic development, it's all sorts of things. And really trying to help out Charlie Martin and his group to make things work as well as it can. So that's one of our big issues, absolutely, as well as transportation. As a city that's, in a sense, we've forced ourselves to be to consume, to be more dense. It's dealing with those issues. So how do we use our land the best that we can, and really make sure that we're getting good transportation flow and everything else? We're a growing city, and there's a lot of issues with it.
We are. I know the department is not static. As a matter of fact, it's very dynamic from what I can tell, with lots of energy and change. Describe that energy and the direction and the changes that you're hoping for in the future.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that I really tried to do when I came here was to make it more open. As a professor, one of the things I was always longing for was data, to analyze, to understand where the problems are, to understand where things are. And one of the things that I've tried to implement is the Commissioner's Report, which is to put out all the information. Again, as a former Planning Commission member, you would have people come and say, well, we didn't know anything about this development. So once a week we put out a report that has everything that our department dealt with. So it's every development plan that came in, every historic preservation certificate of appropriateness, where we are on our capital projects, our land disturbance permits, everything that came in as a permit from building inspection, as well as every single issue we've had from code enforcement, comes out once a week and really helps the public to understand what's going on. We really invite questions to find out, because I think the best thing we can do for these issues is to have this open dialogue and do everything above board. If we're putting that information out there and people can see it and they can ask questions and we can answer them before they get to that stage where things have snowballed and become a much bigger issue than maybe they should be in the first place. But it also really helps to keep us, again, with our capital projects, we put out once a week this status report, where we are on our road projects. And I think that really helps us to make sure that we're going at the rate we should be, so that people know this project it's sitting in that same way, hasn't been updated in a month. Why is that? So helpful for us.
We have talked about a vision for Southland Drive and its importance as a commercial and a neighborhood center. And I know you have talked to the Southland Association, as a matter of fact. What vision do you have for Southland? Well,
to me, this is one of those great opportunities. Southland is in many ways, it's very unique. As I've mentioned to you and the Southland Association before, you've got a higher concentration of locally owned businesses. It's my view of it, of a higher concentration of locally owned businesses than about anywhere else in Lexington. It is very unique. It's got a great history. It's got a lot of great opportunities in terms of things that we could do to make it even better. And I think that's really what we want to do, is help to get those businesses function even better than they are. I mean, where they can be, to really enable them to do what they are really striving for. And we hope through some capital improvements, both to the road, making it more walkable, and working on some of the design issues in that area, that we can really set it up and get it going even better than it is already.
Good. As you know, I'm very interested in the development of Southland Drive, and we're looking forward to working with you on that. As Commissioner, I'd like for you we'll wrap up with this question. If you had one message for the constituency, my constituency in the 10th District, what would you say to them, Derek?
Well, I think what I'll tell you is, we're really working as hard as we can across all divisions to work as integrated as we can, to do things as smart as we can, one, from a taxpayer perspective in terms of our dollars, but also from a longer term. How do we build neighborhoods that are going to function for the residents, not only today but in the future? Those things are extremely important to us, to a man, to a person in our department. And more than anything, we know that the only way we can achieve that is through working with the existing neighborhoods and working with the residents, and that we are committed to that open dialogue to find out how do we get to where everybody really wants to go, which is really this great city, building it and preserving it now and in the future. That is Lexington.
Well, we appreciate that. That's a great message for our folks and our constituency all over the city, not just the 10th District. But Derek, I'd like to thank you for coming and talking to us, and we appreciate all the work you've done, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.